Так, я отключаюсь здесь. 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 Так, я отключаюсь здесь.
Декілька мільйонів
I know, right?
Either way.
Dear colleagues, dear partners, thank you very much for joining us and welcome on the 12th Investment Trading Ukraine Forum organized by A7 Conferences and Dentons. And for the very beginning, I would like to thank to all our partners and supporters. So the organizer of the forum is A7 Conferences, co-organized by Denton, renewable energy partner, Goldman Solar Energy, and for the very beginning, I would like to thank all our partners and supporters.
Saskatchewan and the coffee. And we also have 9 games in the US, and we have really non-stop flights to Istanbul, and that's all Istanbul is doing great. Ukraine is a very important destination for us, both commercially and culturally, and we are very proud to be celebrating Ukraine and the rest of the world. And again, thank you for the support. One more thing before I finish. One more thing before I without further ado, I don't want to take too much of your time. I'm going to leave this stage for the election to begin. Again, thank you very much for being us here this morning, and have a great conference. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your support and for your hospitality. I was coming here with Turkish Airlines from South Africa yesterday, and it was a very great flight for 23 hours on board. So, thank you very much. It was great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I would like to welcome our partner, the partner of Denton's office, of our great support, and thank you very much for this great venue and all the support you are doing for Ukraine. Miron, please welcome.
Hi everyone. I will be boring you later in the second panel, so I'm not going to bore you now. I do welcome you to Denton's and to this forum. We're very happy to be working with Maria and A7. This is our 4th New York forum. So we're very pleased that you could make this 4th one. We are at your disposal to talk to you in detail about Ukraine, about New York, and how we can help, and how all the participants here can help you learn more about Ukraine and the market. We're extremely pleased that we have the minister here. You're doing a lot of great work. Miroslava, thank you for coming. And Uber Posta, Mr. Smilansky, great things coming out of Uber Posta. I think this will be a wonderful panel. Again, thanks everyone. Without further ado, we'd like the conference to begin. My best.
So thank you very much, Miron. Thank you very much for all the support you're doing to Ukraine. So you are the biggest law firm in the world, and you provide any office in your world map to do Ukraine promotion conference. So it's a very big impact and input into our main mission to promote Ukraine worldwide. And also thank you very much, Turkish Airlines. You made us here. You made us safe, and very comfort here all over the world, traveling to promote Ukraine. I would like to introduce our moderator of the second panel, Ms. Miroslava Gungadze, the head of the Ukrainian service, Voice of America. We will have our first session on infrastructure sector of Ukraine, the search for strategic partners. Please, Miroslava, welcome. I will join the panel.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for everyone who come and who have a lot of interest in Ukraine. After a shock period provoked by the loss of territory and the war in eastern Ukraine, the Ukrainian economy has demonstrated steady growth. The Central Bank of Ukraine has estimated that the country's GDP grew 2.1% in 2017 on the back of increased domestic consumption and of goods and services. But according to the country's prime minister, Volodymyr Groysman, Ukraine has a potential to achieve an annual GDP growth of 5% in the coming years. So, what has to be done to realize Ukraine's potential? To answer these questions, we have with us today supposed to be 4, but we have one person delaying. Yes. So, but we have a couple of extraordinary states and businessmen. So, I would like to introduce to you our Minister of Infrastructure of Ukraine, equipped with degree in finance, international relations, economics, and business from Lviv State University, my alma mater, and Lviv Polytechnic University. Mr. Omelyan served the Ukrainian government in many capacities, and after the Revolution of Dignity, he was appointed deputy, and then in 2016, Minister of Infrastructure of Ukraine. We were supposed to have Miron Rabi, but he abandoned us for second panel, unfortunately. So I would not introduce him at this point. We have Igor Smolyansky, acting CEO, Ukrainian Postal Service, Ukrposhta. He has more than 17 years of professional experience in strategic management and financial consulting. Recently, he has been working in New York in KPMG International Company. Mr. Smolyansky holds an MBA degree from Georgetown University, a law degree from George Washington University Law School. And we have Ms. Barabash, but I don't have her bio. I cannot introduce her, unfortunately, but you know, she's a great organizer of this great conference and bringing a lot of investors to Ukraine and try to gain more interest around the world for Ukrainian economy. So I will turn to Mr. Omelyan. Just in last month, Ukraine economy had a few home runs. Elaborated contract between Energoatom and Holte Corporation, which involves U.S. Financial institutions and backed by OTIC. Contract with GE to update Ukrainian aging railway transportation system. And last but not least, a big win in Stockholm against Russian Gazprom. Is this just the start of Ukrainian economy finally moving forward?
Good morning, everybody. So, as it was told, I'm Volodymyr Omelyan, Minister of Infrastructure of Ukraine. Normally, I'm wearing suit and my CEO wearing jeans, but this day is special for me because I'm on vacation and I'm very delighted to spend the morning with you. Thank you for coming. Yes, it's a great change for Ukraine within the last couple of years. I can easily say that because I have what to compare with. I served for the government since 2000. And I visited many presidents, many prime ministers, many governments ruling Ukraine. And this is a real difference since 2003. I will not only speak with declarations and promises, but I'm very proud to say that just recently we signed a huge $1 billion contract with General Electric and Ukrainian Railways. It's already implemented. And we expect more than 225 locomotives of GE coming to Ukraine in this decade. It's a huge deal. It's not only for Ukraine, not only for Ukrainian Railways, but also for General Electric. And we do believe that it could be a real breakthrough for other investors, real indicator that it's safe to invest in Ukraine. Frankly saying, I speak on daily basis with major investors from the West working in Ukraine. Yes, they have some problems. Yes, they still fighting bureaucracy, but bureaucracy is present in the United States as well. Yes, they could be sometimes unhappy, but none of them left Ukraine. Each of them invests more and more into agriculture, into infrastructure, into high tech. And this is exactly what I would like to specify, that Ukraine is not only great in grains, but also is great in brains. And number 3 export from Ukraine is IT services, IT solution and software. This actually is the very specific area we pay special attention to at the Ministry of Infrastructure. We invest heavily into road infrastructure, and this year it will be more than $2 billion invested into road construction. Within upcoming 3 years, it will be more than $7 billion invested. It's about seaport infrastructure, and we welcome this year 2 grand world seaport operators such as Hutchison Port, #1 in the world, and DP World, #3 in the world. We invest heavily into our aviation. Due to reform undertaken by the government, within the last 2 years, we have 30% plus of passenger flow with our airports and international and domestic flights. And I would like to stress once again that we are very happy to have Turkish Airlines. We had some bad times fighting Ukrainian oligarchy in Ukraine, but we have also good times because frequency of Turkish Airlines are growing. And frankly saying, I also took the flight through Istanbul to get to New York with your company. We invest heavily into all other areas under the Ministry of Infrastructure, including Ukrainian Post. And this company is a rather unique one because they do not have a penny from the state budget. On the contrary, with US Mail or Deutsche Post, they allocate their financial resources, they make company transparent, and thanks to that, the financial flow is growing up. We do have very good prospects for digital infrastructure. We have unique facilities for electric vehicles market in Ukraine. It's really booming. And due to recent change imposed by the government and parliament, the number of electric vehicles hits all records all over the world. Ukraine in 2017 was among top 5 world countries as to the growth of the EV market. And very good candy on the cake, we have the largest reserves of lithium in Europe. The lithium, which is identified one of the most strategic resources for the new world to come. We invest heavily into new technologies. Moreover, with digital infrastructure and electric vehicles, we just recently started the elaboration of Hyperloop plans for Ukraine. It was really criticized by public because in public opinion it's impossible to think about new modern technologies having destroyed roads or fighting corruption, but I do believe into that future, that we should simply jump from the technologies of 19th, 20th century into the technologies of 22nd century. If we don't get there fast, we will still fight our past, which is not so that happy as we would like to. So there are many ideas, there are many things, but there are already facts. GE is in Ukraine, Cargill is in Ukraine, Bunty is in Ukraine, Ryanair is coming to Ukraine this year, and I believe that Turkish Airlines will not be very happy with Ryanair flights.
We like competition.
But yes, competition is the best choice for each company to survive and to become stronger. And I do believe that it will have great synergy for all companies on the European market. So there are already undertakings which are in place in Ukraine. You have a lot of information about Ministry of Infrastructure and our projects, upcoming ones, circulated in this audience. What we also suggest to focus on and to push U.S. companies to invest is our seaport activities. Having already Chinese and Arab countries investing into Ukrainian seaport industry, we would like more than happy to welcome U.S. companies to come. And you will have a very safe food chain supply in this regard. There are a lot of U.S. companies in agro sector. There are a number of them into seaport activities. But having them connected all together, you will make a great breakthrough. So this is what we are in right now. And thank you for the call once again. I'm very much delighted to be on your right side today in the morning.
So next, I will ask later some questions about the future, but I would like to give the floor to second panelist, Mr. Igor Smolyansky, Ukrposhta. Ukrposhta is one of the largest companies in Ukraine with 76,000 employees and 11,500 offices, and is now an example of how reforms can succeed even in the most difficult political economical environment. What has to be done to make these changes sustainable, and what Ukrposhta can offer to investors?
Morning, everybody. I'm also happy to be on this panel, and happy to be a CEO of the right company. As you can imagine, I'm sure you all know who is the richest person in the world. Just last week, I was happy to hear that they acquired another company for $1 billion. By the way, having founded some of the Ukrainians, company Ring. And e-commerce will be booming. It will be the sector that will grow. As Miroslava mentioned, we do have unique access to Ukraine, and despite, I think, 25 years of independence, this is the area hugely underinvested. Just to give you some perspective, when I started a year and a half ago, out of 11,500 offices, we had one computer in just over 20% of our offices. So just 20% of the network was computerized. So this year, by mid-year, we set a goal to computerize every single village in Ukraine with more than 2,000 residents, which is, by the way, not a huge difference. But when we started, we did an analysis. It turns out it's not just such an easy task. Not because people don't know how to work on the computers. It was also the case when we announced it, over 300 people resigned because they don't want to work on the computers. But in terms of the IT infrastructure, we had to computerize 2,000 offices. 550 could not be connected with anything outside of the satellite. So we're now working with Viasat, with that data group, with European investors to make it happen through the satellite connection. Same thing with 3G. So part of the offices will go through 3G and other modern technologies, etc. So you can imagine that everybody talking Ukraine as a whole, but Ukraine is a very specific country in that Ukraine has 26,000 villages and cities, and only 1,000 cities. So if you take, draw the line where you have more than 2,000 residents, that leaves about 14 million people living in 2,000 minus villages. It's a huge untapped potential. Just to give you one number, we gave those people an opportunity to order via catalog some basic electronics. We have growth of 320% month over month. It's not high tech, it was just a simple ability of people to order a very basic goods and services. So, and you can imagine, if you take it further and further, this is a huge untapped potential. As Miroslava mentioned, we have 11,500 offices. That's bigger than the entire Ukraine banking system. So all the banks together have 9,000. By the time I'll hit the year mark of my position, we'll have probably 8. But, on the same thing, 40 million people are not part of the financial sector. So Ukraine, today, on G20 rating, Ukraine on the level of Tanzania, unfortunately, on access to financial services. But that's again, the huge amounts of money are not working for investors, not working for businesses, not working for the Ukrainian economy. So there's a huge potential of what can be done. And as I said, over the past 5 months, we bought more trucks than over the past 5 years. And hopefully with the shareholder support we'll buy even more this year. All those trucks are coming. We just signed a deal with Citroën, Renault, Mercedes. All these vehicles that are coming to serve for the first time at a Ukrainian village will see a new Renault. It will be a movable office to serve millions and millions of people. So I think there is a potential. We issued 600 million hryvnias bonds and we oversold it. So it's just the first issue that we plan to finance. As the minister mentioned, we don't get any support from the state, aside from the moral support from the minister, but it may change. We never know. It's election year, you know, it's the country with the huge potential. Our company has a huge potential. So when people talk about Ukraine, there are many places, as I said, outside of the big cities, which may be sometimes invested, which can and should be invested. In terms of what can be done to be successful, I usually give a simple advice: for starters, don't steal. You know, if you have a good reputation, if you have good, solid business potential, I think you can work with investors, even when it's hard. When it's hard, you have to overcome a bunch of legalities. Being a lawyer myself, I wish we had the U.S. legal system, but we don't. But you can still make things happen. So hopefully we can.
How about sustainable? Sustainable, please, question.
Well, in terms of sustainability, in Ukraine, it depends on the teams in power. Hopefully some of the laws will be changed to enable the teams who've been brought for reforms to stay and implement. It's obviously hard to reform infrastructure when you have just 1 year perspective. You know, many things that we do right now going against what we should be doing. For example, we don't show income. So for me to show net income, in city I can fire 10,000 people and leave a bunch of people without services, but I'll show income. So infrastructure takes time to develop. So for the my personal commitment is that, you know, you should have some visibility, 2-3 years. I mean, ideally 5 or more, but at least 2-3 years if you have a stable business plan, either adopted by shareholders, by the government, to give visibility to investors what they can expect. I mean, there will be elections. I mean, you know, this year it will be election, next year will be election. But if you have people working independently out of the government, and I do believe the companies should do that, then you can have a sustainable development. And I am a big proponent of theory of the small wins. You do one small win at a time, you can show the progress. And we had one panel in Ukraine, which I thought was very interesting, with Israeli investor in Ukraine. He's been in Ukraine now for 15 years. And he said the problem is everybody is investing in the short-term businesses. Even the IT outsourcing is a short-term. But he said if there would be one business case, like in Israel now, the Treasury doesn't know what to do with the money because the mobile eye was sold for $15 billion, now Treasury has $3 billion surplus here. So he said if you would not work for $7,000 for development of the IT outsourcing, but maybe work for $3 for some software which can be later sold for $1 billion, that's when you can turn things around and to show that Ukraine on the sustainable path of, for investors, it's a big sign, on sustainable path of conversion to brighter future. So it's a people's factor.
Thank you so much. I would give the floor now to Maria Barabas. And probably the question to you would be, what makes current situation and outlook in Ukrainian economy different than before?
Thank you, Miroslava. Thank you, Vladimir. Thank you, Igor, for your inputs. We're doing this conference for the 4th time already, and we see the difference. And we see the different questions that we're receiving from our participants and our speakers. We are growing, so Ukrainian economy is growing. It's not that fact that you see only negative news about our country. We are here as I think we have the best ambassadors here to promote Ukraine. We have Miroslava in Washington, speaking about Ukraine as a best example in media. We have Volodymyr, our ambassador in infrastructure. We have Igor as an infrastructure and postal service logistics ambassadors here in US with great US expertise. So it's another look of Ukraine. And talking about, we had our first conference in 2013 about Ukraine, and we see a big difference, and it's positive. But it's very hard, and it's very hard. As we see, not a lot of participants today, and it's very hard to promote Ukraine. When our company is 100% owned, and only one owner, so we do not have any support from the government, from the, I mean, like financing or something, what is done for the other organizers in other countries. But we have very great partners. We have dentists as and law firm. We have Turkish Airlines as our official carrier. And we keep on doing that. Yes, it's very hard, but if we won't do that, who will do this? My commitment to keep on investing in doing such conferences is that we should be on the radar. We should be every year, and we should be here and in some other places. We're taking our conference. This week we will be in Miami also, the next our conference. And I see much more positive reaction and interactions from our US partners. I'm very happy that Mr. Omilan is here. We had some good discussions with Hyperloop, and hopefully we'll have some new news coming from San Francisco, as they're really interested in doing that. And it's coming, so whenever we knock on the door, sometimes it's open, but if we won't knock, it won't be opened. So this is our vision for making Ukraine different, promoting Ukraine, as I do very believe in my country and do everything I can to promote it. As we are the largest country in Europe, the geographical center of Europe is in Ukraine. We have beautiful nature, we have so many natural resources, top 3 in the world, and so big potential. So this makes us different. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. And we all want to promote Ukraine, and we're all cheering for Ukraine for many, many years. In the same time, sometimes reality hit, and there's a lot of political risks we are facing in the last, since independent. And for many years, we're hearing from investors same requests. We need independent judiciary in Ukraine, simpler business law, and guarantees for property rights. The reforms are happening, but risks. The economy still remains a high risk economy. So my question to all of the panelists: give us an assessment of those risks and potential rewards.
So, if I may start, Yep. Okay. Like this. Okay. I'm still myself. I'm optimist, not because I'm a minister, but it's my kind of personal commitment. Because I do believe that if I cry, all my business will go down. And if I smile, there is a chance. In case of Ukraine, you should smile. Because opportunities are much more than challenges. And there are a lot of companies which are ready to come. And there is one old Ukrainian joke that one neighbor says to another one, "Please come for me for beer and some food." And neighbor replies, "Yeah, but there is a sign, beware of ugly dog." "Okay, yes, you are right, don't come." There is no more dogs in Ukraine. Doors are open. You can easily come. And since my first day as a minister, I put myself at my personal KPI that we should get into the country top companies of the world. That's why we immediately started cooperation with GE, contract is signed. We immediately started cooperation with Ryanair, number 2 company, aviation company in the world. Contract is signed in March. With Hudson Ports, number 1 seaport operator in the world. Contract will be signed this year. Those are triggers that will change the environment and make all other investors to believe in Ukraine. I cannot imagine a situation that GE is blackmailed or corrupted by some Ukrainian bureaucrat. I cannot imagine a situation that Ryanair or Turkish Airlines will be put in that situation in Ukraine that they will leave the market. In each case, I will stand by each company to protect them from any kind of misbehavior they can meet. Yes, definitely there are a lot of bureaucratic things that really mess the country. Yes, there are still a lot of corruption, but it's not about Ministry of Infrastructure. We do it right, so join us, you are well protected.
Yeah, I mean, I fully support the same thing. Once you have foreign companies coming, it's a sign. And the risks, I think business risks are everywhere. I mean, people invest in Somalia. It's much worse place than, much riskier place in Ukraine. You just price it. You price it, for example, our bonds that we issue was 18% per annum. I mean, I wish they would be at 3, but they're at 18. But it's still, there are some buyers, so the risks can be slowly or faster managed. So I think Ukraine is the country where it's a relatively moderate risk as it is, and obviously all the things that are done, it's an indicator. So if GE is working, it's an indicator for the smaller or similar companies to come in. So yes, ideally we would like to have the laws changed. And you don't have to recreate the bicycle, you have to just take the laws which work in other countries. Example of Kazakhstan, for example, they created a court where all the business arbitration done according to English law. Obviously, that's one of the steps in the right direction. I think the second would be tough, given this election year, to fight populism. Not that many countries, not just Ukraine, are successful in that respect, but we should not be so naive as to believe that we will appoint judiciary, extremely honest, he or she will get $300 salary and will rule on the $1 billion deals. That will never happen. Santa Claus is coming just once a year. So, from that perspective, I do believe having foreign companies which have strict rules of engagement, have strict rules of working in the countries is the first step in the right direction.
Well, I will just add on our legal environment. Yes, we know that there are a number of laws which are outdated, and with this specific point of view, we elaborated together with IFIs and big investors brand new law on concession. One of the best features of this law is that if something goes wrong, you don't go into the Ukrainian court. You can apply to any international arbitrage you choose. Stockholm, London, Paris. It's your point of view. This new law to be adopted by the Parliament within first half of 2018. And with this new law, we start concession of our mid-size seaports, and then we'll jump to the large seaports. So you are well protected, and you are well protected in common for you international legal environment.
Thank you very much. And as you can see, we Our fourth panelists have arrived. Thank you so much. Hope everything was okay and you managed to come. That's great. So it's Vyacheslav Andreyko. He's a general director of Wilson Towers Watson. He has 25 years of insurance and reinsurance experience. And Willis Towers Watson is the largest global advisory company that helps clients around the world turn risk into a path for growth. So actually, our last question is perfectly fit to our four panelists. So tell us how to turn Ukrainian risk to growth. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Miroslava, and apologies for being late. I wish I flew Turkish Airlines like people did. Unfortunately, with U.S. major East Coast airports being shut due to hurricane winds, we had to fly from different European capitals, Frankfurt, Geneva, London. So finally, yesterday at night, into London, into New York. So next time, Turkish Airlines. Of course, speaking about risk, as an insurance person and reinsurance person, starting from 2013, we hear a lot of demands and questions from investors. Ukraine suddenly became not only a risky place, a hot place, but it also became a sanctioned territory. So when you come to an underwriter, he says, well, I'd like to place as a broker, I'd like to place the Ukrainian risk. The underwriter will say, oh, you're from Ukraine, it's a sanctioned territory. It will mean that I need to do much more things. I need to do much more compliance, much more this and this and that. And so many walked away from Ukraine. However, things are improving, and there are two breakthroughs that happened in the end of last year. And OPIC was the one that sent a message, a very solid message, to the international insurance market and reinsurance market. The first one came in September 2017. OPIC board approved $250 million in political risk insurance to support the construction of the Energoatom Central Spent Nuclear Fuel Storage Facility in the Chernobyl exclusion zone in Ukraine. And the storage facility will have the capacity to store 160,000 tons of spent fuel per year, reducing the need to ship it to Russia, and it will move Ukraine closer to energy independence. And that's a great achievement. That was the first time when, after the shock that the market experienced resulting from the Russian aggression against Ukraine and annexation of Crimea, that the OPIC, the insurance institution, gave such a big political risk coverage to a Ukrainian project. The next one came in December 2017, and again OPIC, the US government's development finance institution, approved up to $150 million in financing, along with up to $250 million again in political risk insurance and reinsurance to Eurocap Ukraine LLC to support construction and operation of the first 225 megawatt phase of a planned 500 megawatt wind farm. Great achievement. And Minister Omelian, thank you very much. You brought just another one, GE, with a signed contract for the rehabilitation and hopefully production of electrical diesel railway cars into Ukraine. That is another breakthrough. And that's a great signal. I represent private insurance market. Of course, OPIC is a government institution, but as a private market, we look at the big boys. And big boys say, you can move now. You may be protected. And so the 60 private syndicates and insurers who insure political risk insurance, they now say, perhaps it's time. And so when you think about investing in Ukraine, think about that things are changing really, and not only changing in Ukraine, as you can hear from panelists, but they're changing from the other side of the fence. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm pretty sure that you guys have a lot of questions and in interest in Ukraine, so I would open the floor to your questions. Welcome.
Thank you. Okay. Great presentations, and I also share your optimism as to a turnaround, in particular in the last quarter, last 6 months, in terms of investment in Ukraine, and in particular U.S. investment in Ukraine. I think U.S. investment has actually finally come, and it's coming big. And I think that's a great takeaway to take from this conference in New York, being that U.S. investment and the big players are coming into the market with confidence and with open coverage. What I wanted to ask is, ask the Minister, Pan Volodymyr, the law on concessions will be a huge thing. And I think if you can share with us a little bit more about how you, and I wanted to ask you when you expect to see that come into place, and as to the proposals that you have in the materials, are you expecting that most of them will fall under that law? So it really would be helpful, because concession work and PPP projects are something that the market has been waiting for, and something that the ministry has been talking about, and the concession law is certainly a step in the right direction. Now, we have a first PPP project that started, by the way, on the nuclear front, and I'm sure you know about that with GE and the EU bridge, which is a great development as well, and that's a market development where the EU will be refurbishing an electric line from the Khmelnytskyi power plant to Poland, and in exchange for the development of the Khmelnytskyi plant, where Khmelnytskyi will be able to export electricity into Europe for 20 years. And that's a great infrastructure project as well. It's straight energy and nuclear as well, but it is a PPP organized project. I think that's another great thing that I just wanted to mention to the audience. But PPP is also moving, the concession law is moving. Obviously, the next question everybody will have will be privatization. Will that ever move? Perhaps strategic, if that's a tough strategic question, maybe PPP is the way to go around it, but I'd like to hear your thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, for this issue, it's really crucial for me as an minister, because I don't believe that government could be the vice manager of all companies in the world, including Ukraine. And I do believe that the privatization of state-owned companies or concession, if we talk about the largest ones, is the only key for success of Ukraine. What is already done by the government? We adopted new procedure on privatization. It really simplifies the nature significantly. We are committed to adopt new law on concession. With this new law, foreign companies are able to plan their long-term investment portfolio for Ukraine for 25, 49 years of tenure, with best protection from the governmental side and under the very good conditions. Plus, as I already mentioned, that any legal dispute could be undertaken in any international or foreign court as the company wishes. It was a bad practice for Ukraine that state property was only for lease. And it's a huge loss, it's a huge misuse, and we would like to forget about this page and move into concession or privatization. I do believe that that more than 10 projects we develop right now for PPP and concession, we are about to complete pre-feasibility and feasibility study. Second half of 2018 will be presented for foreign investors, and I would also count on your kind support for making good road shows for us to present them worldwide. It's first time ever state body presents real Western quality of feasibility studies. We always used to talk about Ukraine as a country of huge potential, but when investor asks, okay, show me one particular project, that's really pause. Not anymore. We are ready with the projects in maritime industry, in road industry, in aviation area, in post as well, to talk very precisely with particular investors what he wants to do and where to invest in France. Another example of concession, state-owned airports. Another two new ones to be built. There are number investors, frankly saying, from Turkey, which are very much interested in building under concession Dnipro Airport. You know what kind of problems we have in Dnipro, and also Kherson Airport. So there are already projects ready to go. Only one thing is about the law, and second half of the year we waiting for you with your ideas.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any one? No? Okay, then I'll probably would ask a little bit of the, in a way, political risks and that relate to economy. IMF is demanding a couple of very specific things has to be done in Ukraine, specifically anti-corruption court and raise of gas prices. And IMF is saying that they would not release the second or third tranche for Ukraine until these things will be done. Without second tranche, Ukraine would not be able to have sustainable financial stability, and there is a risk of hryvnia devaluation, right? Devaluation of hryvnia. So how do you assess those risks, and do you see the political will to meet the IMF demand? For both of you, if that's possible.
I cannot foresee situations that IMF stops cooperation with Ukraine. Therefore, I fully believe in second and other tranches coming to Ukraine. Second issue, and maybe the first issue, is not the reform for IMF, European Union, or United States. This is the reform for Ukraine. And yes, there is a struggle. Yes, there are some parts of political elite that would like to skip some obligatory measures to change Ukraine, but it's impossible. And there is a strong political statement from President of Ukraine, Prime Minister of Ukraine, that anti-corruption court will be in place. That all anti-corruption measures will be implemented. Yes, there is some problem because of the upcoming presidential and parliamentary elections. But I do believe it's also a good chance for Ukraine to keep on going. And there is a good chance for Ukraine to keep on reforming itself, regardless of elections which are in the air. And there is a strong motivation from inside of the country that whether you reform Ukraine or you leave, and others will reform Ukraine.
I personally believe, first of all, life is full of surprises, so you never know what's better or what's worse. Right? At the end of the day, like with any company, the state budget is the budget. So you have to make, credit equal debit. So if IMF tranche is not coming, something else should be coming because people have to get pensions and salaries. Maybe it will push loan privatization to be more active and for some state assets to be sold. So, I'm optimistic in that perspective, so sometimes when the situation gets worse, sometimes it can get better. In example of Ukropochta, when I started and someone says law or the word of privatization, God forbid, somebody gets some shithole small office in the village, it's, the world will come to an end. At this point, people slowly coming to realization that it's actually possible. Ukropochta owns 1.3 million square meters of real estate. At the same time, we are in a not such a nice financial state. If the law is adopted, we can turn it around. If the state would have a lot of money, it would never happen. We would get some kind of tranche, some kind of subsidy, but that will never happen. So, from my perspective, is sometimes the situation presents unusual opportunities for things to turn to a better. So if IMF operates, even better. If it does not, the state will still have to find some source of financing in election year of its obligations. So one way or the other, I think something will come out of it.
So what doesn't kill us make us stronger, I guess. Mr. Van Dijken, do you have a take on it?
Yeah, I think I would agree that the wheel of history cannot be stopped. And we've committed to a change. And I agree that no matter what happens, Ukrainians will prevail and will be successful. As far as insurance market and political risk observation of the insurance market, of course we watch for things like IMF and OPAC that I mentioned. But we are simple people. We are looking at things that already happened. So we take example of things that were in Ukraine, that happened in various courts, that unfortunately made some investors unhappy, and we derive our solutions and we react to these things with our insurance wordings and with some clauses. And so the breakthroughs, and I spoke earlier about the breakthroughs of some insurance leaders on the market, and the good news that are coming from Ukraine, these are some things that will change the perception. But the wheel of history still will go on.
Thank you very much. So any questions from the floor? No? Okay. Welcome.
This is a question regarding Ukropochta. We hear a lot of good things about the company, but perhaps if you could share with us you're talking about a 2-3 year business strategy. What are you looking to do, and what financing, and what are you seeking to finance, and how over the next 2-3 years? If we're talking about an investment audience, what's your offer?
Sure. In terms of revenue, we plan to triple it in the next 3 years. As tough as it sounds, we're still going to do it. One of the reasons e-commerce market in Ukraine grows 35%. Just one number, which I'm sure is interesting to Turkish Airlines: export from Ukraine to the US. Not import, not from Amazon to Ukraine, but export from Ukraine to the US, just this year grew 48%. So we could not handle that volume with Ukrainian airlines. We signed with Turkish Airlines, with Lufthansa, with other partners, because just this year we increased from 3 tons to 6 tons per year. It's Ukrainian small and medium enterprises that's exporting to Amazon. It's goods that's exported. It's dresses, wooden constructor sets, small jewelry, etc., etc. But this market is huge and is growing. Just to give you an idea, one dress sells from Poltava to the US for $5,000. So the entire village is working on that. But someone needs to help with this transportation. We hope we can bring PayPal to Ukraine to enable more and more businesses. But overall, from the infrastructure standpoint, our investment needs are in the range of $200 to $300 million. What we plan to do is, for example, as it stands today, we have 35 sorting centers, all manual. We need about 5, all computerized. So the investment for that is about $200 million. We'll attract some of we plan to attract some of the borrowing capacity. If the government decides we can be at least 25% privatized, obviously we'll be looking for investors. And we're looking to turn the real estate which we don't need, and so we own 1.3 million square meters of real estate. Some of it is prime real estate. Historically, Ukrposhta was carrying post through railways, and all our sorting centers in the middle of the cities. In Kiev, it's 3 hectares of land. Next by the railway station, 25,000 square meters of real estate in the center of the Kiev. We don't need that. We want to sell that and build a new sorting center or buy or lease in the Bristol area. And it's the same for all the cities. So that's one of areas for investment. And second, I mentioned before that we want to digitize all villages, and it's not just want, we will do it. This year, all villages 2,000 plus. But then there's 2,000 minus residents, and that's about also 10 million people. There we plan to introduce movable office, and for that we'll be also attracting investment. As I said, our first deal was with Citroën and Renault. They will be the first suppliers for the first area, but it will be just 130 vehicles. We will need, it's one region, so you can multiply it by 24. You can imagine how much investment, and it's a pure business. There is nothing, there is nothing sort of, I call it, from my first day I'm trying to fight the world social responsibility. When I was in the US, it's a modern world. In Ukraine, it means you have to do something for free. So it's a business. And we also plan, if we are successful in, by the way, IMF changed its also position. IMF changed its position that Ukraine Post should get financial services license. That's basically 14 million clients which can enter e-commerce flow, which can enter financial services. So we'll be looking for investments into IT, auto sector, and for co-investors or investors into sorting facilities. China is well looking to have a transition point for its goods to Europe, and Ukraine strategically located to make it happen. So hopefully we'll make that happen as well.
Are you planning to use whatever Prozora system and selling the real estate?
We actually do use Prozora. We saved, just for this year, we saved 400 million hryvnias not from the announced price, but from the last year price. So despite the fact that prices went up, we are one of the most experienced users of Prozora. It's a tough system, I won't lie. It's a tough system when you're buying professional services, but Minister knows we have some numbers to share where we're buying sometimes twice as cheap as other state-owned companies. Sometimes we publicize it, sometimes we don't. But we acquire it through Prozora. Some of the things, unfortunately, you cannot buy through Prozora, or Prozora is not suited. For example, vehicles. In Ukraine, we try to buy vehicles, or at least we hope to, on the total cost of ownership. So we bought a Mercedes, 5-year-old fleet of Mercedes trucks. They did not stay for 1 day. They've all been working for the last year. We bought, I won't name the brand, but we bought another brand, new cars in Ukraine. 30% of them are not working. So unfortunately in Ukraine, you cannot build in the Prozora yet total cost of ownership numbers, because you never can prove to prosecutor how many times things get broken. But so we're doing a combination of leasing. So actually with the help of investors, we're doing leasing operations on the vehicles, and thanks to approval from the ministry, we can do it. So it's a combination of direct investment, leasing, borrowing, and hopefully, ideally, privatization in the coming years.
If I may just add, I would like simply to use the example of Ukrainian postal office to answer the question, is Ukraine different? In 2015, we were about to close Ukrainian postal service. It was not the issue of theory, it was the issue of real life. Ukrainian post was corrupt, it was totally corrupted, all money were gone. 80,000 employees were not able to get their salary. 2015. Right now, in 3 years after, situation is dramatically different. Ukrainian Post is competing private operators on the market, competing successfully. The services are much more qualified and gives much better quality. And we are now planning our strategic vision for developing the market. It's about Ukraine as well. The difference of 2014, 2015, and 2018 is dramatic. You simply should go.
Thank you so much. I see a question. I am really very proud to see this man who are really making a real difference. And I have a general question, but I would let you first.
Vladimir, here's a question for you. So, according to the new privatization law, here's a tested online auction system that is being tested right now, this moment. So, basically, what happens, we can sit here in your city and put a bet for property or land in Ukraine. So, can you give us some updates on that thing?
Yes, actually, this is a system which was developed on the basis of Prozoro. It's called Dozoro. It deals with all state assets, to lease, to sell, to privatize. Ukrainian Post Office is one of the first player, actually the first player with this Dozoro system and one of the most successful ones. And we do see that revenues of the state increases dramatically when we operate through the system. What was the common practice for Ukraine before that? There were hidden deals. They put the minimum price plus some extra bonuses of corrupted nature for clients, and that's it. The state was losing money with each particular case. Not anymore, since the Dozoro is in place. And if I'm not wrong, the Dozoro system was awarded best winner prize last week in Washington concerning anti-corruption measures, concerning transparency of the system.
The Institute of Peace, yes.
Just maybe one comment, can give you the numbers. Unfortunately, we cannot sell assets yet, even though I do hope we can. Soon, we can lease. So the latest auction, same lease lessor, same property. So if before he was paying 2,500, now he pays 35,000. It was the auction, open auction, he won. Again, same property, nothing changes. It just, we went from a direct sort of contract into the Zora online auction. We got what, 7-10 times increase in price.
Yeah, that's the thing, because according to some sources, 25% of the land in Ukraine is still owned by government. And they say if that land would be, if that land could be used by foreign companies, just to basically, lease, so the government can get like, I believe like it was $1.5 billion a year or something like that. If it's true, I don't know. Can you comment?
I just recently talked to a good friend of mine who was a former CEO of Sweden state funds dealing with all state assets, and he also published a very good book, How to Run State Property Right. And he claims one very ordinary thing. Look, guys, state property is heavily underestimated. You simply losing chance of billions, trillions of US dollars under your legs. And we do understand that all those issues concerning privatizations are very much politicized. Populists use all those arguments to block privatization. They scream about land privatization. They scream about state asset privatization. And every time I address them, that look, it's not about foreigners to come and to take it away. It's about foreigners to come to invest its own money and to get added value for country, including. We are going ahead, and I do believe that this issue will be resolved. I'm not very optimistic about this year or next year, but it should be done in 2020 at the latest.
Okay.
She has a question, and you, please. Could you identify yourself?
Yes, of course, I can speak without microphone.
I can give you the mic.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Irina Benediktova. I am Ukrainian. I am the arbitrator of International Commercial Arbitration Court in Kyiv, and I am the head of Civil Law Department at Kharkiv National University. I am in law more than 20 years. That's why, of course, I have questions in legal sphere. Of course, it's pleasure to see you, Mr. Maryan, because I really like you. You are more than ministry. I read from time to time your posts on Facebook. And I like your staff decisions and how you finished the situation with Mr. Balchun. It was really cool, and I think it's everyone can understand that this person can take his word. I have two questions. First of one is about public-private partnership. As said Mr. Miron Rabi, but I think that TPP is not only privatization or corporatization, it's more. I tried to make scientific part with State University. It was 2 years of health circles, of course, and we didn't make it yet, but I hope we do. Maybe you have fresh examples in infrastructure sphere of these PPP projects, really fresh. This is one question. And then another question is about blockchain technology. Do you plan to use this technology in the ministry, or maybe it is a question to your colleague too, because I think that blockchain is absolutely clear technology. I had corruption too, and I think the corruption is the one point which we can't make PPP in normal way. And maybe blockchain will help us. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'll simply start answering by explaining who is Mr. Balchuk. He was a former CEO of Ukrainian Railways. I was fighting him all over in 2017. Thanks God I won. He was totally incompetent person, and right now we have a new acting CEO, and I do believe that Ukrainian Railways will progress with his leadership. Concerning PPP projects, yes, we do have a number of them. We do understand that the PPP dimension is strongly underestimated in Ukraine. That's why in 2016 we established PPP office, SPILNOT, we call it, to develop a feasibility study for a number of projects in maritime, railway and other industries. We are ready to go with them. Second half of 2018 we announced tenders for 2 seaports for PPP in Ukraine. It's Seaport Olbia and Seaport Kherson. It will be a lesson for us as well, because it's new practice for Ukraine actually, especially in infrastructure field. If it works well, we will expand this experience to other industries. And second question was about blockchain, yes. I'm happy to say that Ukraine is among top 14 members, states in the world sharing blockchain experience. And right now we develop a number of blockchain technologies under the Ministry of Infrastructure, concerning licensing, concerning special audits and ERP systems. We already have 2 state services on blockchain with the Ministry of Justice and another agency, and Ministry of Infrastructure will be the third body of Ukraine to implement blockchain. We do believe in this technology. I think it's the best solution as of nowadays to avoid any kind of interventions or corruption schemes to change the past for somebody's future. And it's the good thing for us. For me, we can fight corruption endlessly, but the best solution is to avoid instrument for corruption. By implementing blockchain, by implementing IT services, we can do it easily.
No, I mean, I think for us it's probably 3+ years perspective. Being, it's really cool for the CEO always talk to blockchain. I read somewhere if you add the word blockchain on your resume, your price goes up by 30%. But from the realistic standpoint, just recently I was facing with the decision: do we create payment system which is online and much cheaper, more efficient, Prozora, or we have to work it offline? But being in different areas of Ukraine, I realized as much as I would like to be high tech and stuff, I think we have to sometimes take a baby steps and take people along the ride. So giving that we are present in all the villages somewhere where civilization has not stepped in yet. So I think we'll do the first steps and then we'll follow through with the next steps, probably 3+ years.
Thank you. Maybe you had something. Yes, we have a question from our online audience. I have a question from Nadia Kazancheva, the Deputy Minister for Infrastructure, so previously and now an advisor to the Minister. What is the status of corporate governance reform in Ukraine? So Nadia has such a question. I think it's to you, Mr. Minister.
I believe she knows the best, but I'm also happy to announce that Ministry of Infrastructure is the only ministry that implemented corporatization of 2 largest state-owned companies, Ukrainian Railways and Ukrainian Post. Igor Smolyansky did it within record timing, less than 8 months. And we are also undergoing corporatization reform with a number of smaller state companies under us. Plus, we implement corporate governance. Unfortunately, we are the only ones doing so, but I hope that all other agencies will join us soon.
Thank you. If we don't have any more questions, I would ask the last probably question for our panel, and that would be about reforms in Ukraine. General question. What was done, do you think, very effectively after the revolution, up to this time? And what was not done, and what has to be done urgently to actually move Ukraine forward? It's for everyone.
I think most ordinary question to me from any guy who knows me more or less good, they always ask, how do you survive? And how do you spend it? It's tough. It's tough when you change something. It's tough to convince people to do things right when they are used to do things wrong. But still it's possible. It's doable. And there is a huge step forward of Ukraine concerning transparency. In 2013, I was about to emigrate from the country because I didn't see any kind of glimpse of hope for Ukraine. I did understand at that time that Yanukovych would lead Ukraine to catastrophe. And as a physical person, I don't want to be on the same boat when he goes down. Thanks God, Dignity Revolution changed a lot. And we have a number of reforms which are successful ones. The only issue is we used to have a very good Deputy Minister of Interior, Ekos Buladze. She left for Paris, but she did a great police reform in Ukraine. And she said that, look, Ukraine right now is a huge number of islands of reforms. You should connect those islands with bridges and to make land of reform. This is the main issue for us right now.
For some reason, I'm also asked the same question. Just on Friday, I was invited by journalists to give a lecture called How to Make Reforms in the Country of Populism. It was the same question. I mean, honestly, my recipe would be simple: hire honest people, pay them a lot of money, and give them total immunity. The last part is also important. I have huge respect for the minister and his team. The laws in Ukraine are such, the way they're written, is if you do something, probably on your first day you can go to jail. I mean, every day I'm signing stacks of papers like this thick, and there's, I mean, 5 or 6 articles of criminal code I'm surely breaking. So you cannot take time to revise them all, to look them through. Some of them, apparently my contract is governed by the 1963 law of SSPS. But, you know, it will take, no kidding, it will take a long time to change it. So to me, that would be a simple recipe. Hire people, pay them a lot of money, professional people, and give them total immunity, aside to the point where they actually steal into their own pocket. Yes, that is, that should be forbidden. But everything else, they should be able, because their hands are tied. I mean, for anybody who works in the government, I came from business, and trust me, I always tell the story. On the first day, I got a call from the Ministry of Defense. Personally, I was happy because, like, you need to help our country put the advertising to attracting people to the army in your offices. I was like, sure, I'll do it. Then in 2 minutes my lawyer came and said, if you do it, it's 5 years in jail. Because you cannot do anything free. As a state company, it's called loss of the state money. And such laws, they're widespread. I mean, things we're doing with investments now, this cars, the ministry can share how much time it took in his personal effort to issue bonds. Because, I mean, there's gazillions of laws you must be breaking, corruption, etc. So, Ukraine does not have that much time for if you want to really fast reforms. So, I think that would be my recipe, new people, normally paid, and give them immunity so they can actually make things happen. Because if you have normal people, even normally paid, and their hands are tied, sooner or later, or rather sooner, they get disincentivized, and they will just give up.
Even in our quiet industry, we have reforms. When I was preparing for presenting my presentation, I put the number of insurance companies in Ukraine as the usual thing that I would do, 400-ish. But then I realized that this year the number dropped to 267 and continues going down. And one would say, oh gosh, that's probably a bad thing. No, it's a good thing. Because for years and years, insurance in Ukraine has been used as tax avoidance schemes, as money laundering, as nothing but a scheme business. And that started changing a few years ago with serious underwriting coming about in the country, with movement from shadow economy to real risk taking, to real risk underwriting. And so we still have a huge number of companies that are either dormant or still waiting for a shady deal and then disappear. But about 50 companies underwrite about 90% of the total premium volume. And when you look at the companies that underwrite this business, you will find familiar faces. The sorts of AXA, Allianz, Colonnade, the newcomer from Canada, the regional players like uniqueness, Vienna Insurance Group, and the like. And of course, there are major international brokers like Willis Towers Watson, Aon, Marsh, JLT, who are bringing culture, who are bringing the transparent compliancy deals and everything that we all enjoy here in the States, in the UK, internationally. And so Ukraine is changing even in a very quiet field of insurance.
Thank you so much, and I would probably give a few minutes each of you to summarize the panel, your experience in Ukraine and with investors.
Thank you, Miroslava. Thank you, Maria, for organizing such a marvelous event. One of the most favorite quotes of Ronald Reagan I personally love, he said once that the most scary words in the world are following: I'm from the government, I'm here to help. I'm happy that I changed this opinion of foreign investors working with the Ministry of Infrastructure, and they are very gladly accept assistance of the Ministry of Infrastructure. My ideal world, when investors come to the country without any kind of political or governmental support, is simply enter the market, work there, earn money, make country better. But at this stage, I'm from the government. I'm here to help.
I just want to say that, risk is a good thing. Try to find the one that's manageable. Ukraine is a great country to invest, and you can find some opportunities you cannot find somewhere else. So I think it's worth taking a look, it's worth taking a risk, and hopefully that every year we have more and more people sharing good stories where the risk was worth taking.
Thank you very much, everybody, for such great discussion. And what I would like to add is that we at A7 Capital are creating a blockchain portal for investors to have a secured investing in Ukraine. So we will have all secure transactions, all the historical data, all the financials of the Ukrainian companies. It will be the first one in Ukraine, and we have Krele Capital with us. It's also investment company founded by Ukrainian women, and we're doing this together. So the main thing that we need now is trust, and we have a lot of trust that people in Ukraine. And please subscribe to UBJ News about Ukraine in English. It's one of the very updated information about Ukraine. Please listen to Voice of America interviews. There is a very comprehensive speakers right from Washington. So this is the best media and source of information, of data you can have, and we're happy that all of them, or all of you are here now. And thank you very much also for the participants. You can have the questions to all the speakers through our mobile application. You can just chat it, you need to download it. Thank you very much, and let's invest in Ukraine, the largest country in Europe. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like just to say that needing insurance is like needing a parachute. If it is not there for the first time, chances are you won't need it again. So there's never enough insurance, and it's also, you have to think about the other party who's at fault, whether he had enough insurance. So my message to you is always think about risk, and always think that there are some professionals who can come and mitigate it and help you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Slava Ukraini. Dear guests, please welcome to the call. We are starting our second panel discussion on energy sector of Ukraine. In search of for strategic partners. Dear speakers, please have a seat at the tables. And we invite everybody. We will have a very interesting second discussion for the energy. I would like to introduce our moderator, Katya Soldak, editorial director for Forbes International Editions, and I'm very happy that Katya made us, and it is a great honor for us that you are here. We have such a great moderator, and Katya is from Kharkiv, so I'm very happy. So we have our Ukrainians here in New York, working in international media. Dear speakers, please have a seat.
In 1 hour. Yeah, in 1 hour. At 12 o'clock.
Dear speakers.
Speaker, please.
Fine. Good morning, everyone. It's great seeing everyone. Thanks for being here today. We're moving to the second session of our conference. It's titled Ukraine's Energy Sector in Search of Strategic Partners. And we have a great cast of special guests today, all with expertise in investing and peace and Europe, specifically Ukraine. And we will cover a variety of topics from general picture in energy sector of Ukraine to renewable energies to challenges that investors face in Ukraine and importance of good business news for investors, as well as legal issues with Ukraine's energy reform. So the first speaker I would like to introduce is Ilya Ponomaryov. He is an entrepreneur and one-time politician in Russia. Now he lives between the US and Ukraine, and he has a great expertise in natural resources opportunities. And Ilya wants to speak to us about challenges that investors face and myths, and we would like to find out how serious these myths are and what are the main concerns. Please welcome Ilya Ponomaryov.
Hello everyone, and thank you Maria for organizing the conference and for all the guys for hosting us. That's I think really important, and indeed I wanted to speak more about myths and myths in a positive sense. Because I think that when we are speaking about challenges towards Ukraine, sometimes people tend to exaggerate those challenges. I think they are in reality, firstly, way less significant than the media tries to portray. And most importantly, they are different than like general public perception and general public theory. Because when you're speaking about doing business in Ukraine, first association that you are getting is corruption, is chaos, is unpredictability, and that's all true. But does it affect really the possibility to do investments in the country? I don't think that much. We know that there are countries in the world which are way more corrupt, way more chaotic, with also military activities, way more severe than they are in Ukraine, but nevertheless people do invest there and do great business and make very nice profits. I'm coming from Russia, and everything that I was doing in my country was facing more or less the same challenges. People tend to think that if we look like ordinary Europeans, then probably things are supposed to be like in Europe, and that is wrong. And when they come into the country and when they see the situation, they start to say, okay, so it's a nightmare, it's different, and they run away, and they're making a grave mistake. Because if you're looking at the financial performance of the country and the business possibilities and opportunities that we have there, they are fantastic. The valuations of companies in Ukraine right now at all-time low. The workforce is unparalleled in terms of its quality and in terms of its cheapness. So I understand that when many of citizens of the country can complain about this corruption and poverty and unsettled situation with the government for investors, I think it's like a paradise actually. And currently what we see in the country is a kind of implemented libertarian dream of virtually non-existent government, which of course cannot solve the purposes that we sometimes expect it to solve. But from the other side, which is seldomly obscuring things and preventing something from happening, because it's not possible for this government to prevent something from happening. And this is quite good. In the energy sector in particular, also many people say things about the problems with getting new licenses, but they tend to forget that there's a huge secondary market of companies which are underperforming, underfunded, which already acquired a lot of licenses in the past, which they cannot develop. And it is quite easy to enter the market and get the working capital of those companies and then start doing projects. They are available. And if you stop thinking about how government can help, then things start to develop pretty nicely. The company that I represent is an investment company. We raised quite substantial capital here in the United States because we didn't want to approach the traditional type investors, which usually people are chasing when they are thinking about investing in Ukraine. There is no private equity market in the country. There are several of usual suspects, but it's very hard to make deals with them for different reasons. And there is no stock market in the country. So I always, of course, again compare Ukraine to Russia. And I remember when we needed to start things to develop them in the first place in my country, it all started from financial speculators on the stock market. And one of the first things that we have done at the beginning of the 90s was initiating our own stock market in Moscow. And that helped us a lot. The investors which were coming there, they were very aventuristic, very opportunistic, without any strategic passion for the country in general. But they actually allowed us to create the market and start things rolling. Such things do not exist in Ukraine, but it doesn't mean that we, working from the United States, for example, cannot create the same thing, the same public vehicles which would be capable of investing in Ukraine. And that's what we are doing, and not without certain success. We see tremendous interest towards Ukraine from people at hedge funds, for example. But before that, they were not able to invest because they didn't have anything to buy in Ukraine. If they are provided with the necessary tools, they can come, they can invest, and they are not scared of war and corruption and the government and the regulations, because it's their business to make such a risky bet. To conclude and speak more about the energy possibilities in Ukraine, many people tend to forget or just don't know that Ukraine in the middle of the 70s was net exporter of natural gas. Actually, Moscow and St. Petersburg was supplied by the natural gas that was produced in Ukraine. At that time, Ukraine was producing around 75 billion cubic meters of natural gas. Currently, it produces around 20. But nevertheless, this 20 means that half of internal production is being covered with internal sources. And speaking from a geological point of view, to double this production, it's absolutely no-brainer. It can be Western modern technologies to the country with the existing gas fields without developing anything new. And there is a big untapped region on western part of the Black Sea, which was developing pretty rapidly before the annexation of Crimea with Chernomornaftogaz. Unfortunately, it's gone to Russia, but that means that the whole area right now is vacant and can be approached and developed and can produce a substantial production. Electricity-wise, Ukraine is hugely proficient on electricity with large reserves on production of more power generation. Generation of heat, it's also an area which can be turned into profitable and profitable business. With the recent win of Naftogaz versus Gazprom in terms of transportation, that creates new tensions between Gazprom and Europe, and I was very much afraid that Germany would push through the project with Nord Stream 2 after Gazprom engaged itself in the EU gas war with the transportation transit contract. Now again the prospects of Nord Stream 2 are going down, and that again creates a new possibilities to develop business in Ukraine, which I highly encourage you to do, to come, to invest, and I think that you will get a lot of fun and pleasure from doing it.
Thank you so much for your
Yeah. This was a very positive beginning. We would like to invite Miro and Ravi to give us an overview of the energy market in Ukraine in general, and that would be our transition from this general introduction to the conversation actually about energy.
Thank you. I need something to point to. Board, yeah.
I would like to
Yeah. Maybe this way? Okay. But if any of you have comments or questions, save them until the end of the session. We're going to leave some time when you can ask all the speakers whichever questions you have right now.
Sorry, folks, technical difficulties. Your money is
Okay. Hello? How about now? No, that was just a bad mic. Well, since we're having a few technical difficulties at the moment, I would like to introduce Andrei Konichenko, who can talk to us a little bit about the sensitivity of the energy market in Ukraine in general, how it means a little bit more than just investment and business opportunities because of the energy wars, gas wars with Russia, and also about the wind energy sector, which is Andrei's expertise. Meanwhile, I would like to say that Andrei Konichenko is chairman of the board of the Ukrainian Wind Energy Association. This organization will be 10 years old in May. He's one of the founders of that organization and also vice president of the World Wind Energy Association. Andrei has 25 years of experience in renewable energy sector and is the author of more than 200 publications in the field. Please welcome Andrei Konichenko.
Thank you very much. Today I'm going to give a short presentation on investment opportunities in wind power sector in Ukraine. Based on my 25 years experience in renewable energy field, I'd like to stress that renewable energy development is successful when there is a state support and political will in the country. Ukraine is a country where state support for the wind industry exists. By the way, this in the slide, all Ukrainian wind turbines, wind farms. It would be fair to call 2017 the year when the green sector, the electricity power industry of Ukraine, recovered from stagnation. After 2 years, during which international financial institutions were not active in financing new renewable energy projects. 2017 has become quite successful, giving hope that new and more powerful renewable energy projects will be implemented within the next 2-3 years. Current installing capacity has reached 594 megawatt, 250 megawatt under construction and 2,921 megawatt under development. Local manufacture of modern wind turbine of our 2 megawatt capacity has been also established in the country. According to our forecast, nearly 4 gigawatt wind capacities will be installed in Ukraine by the end 2025. The main driving force main feed-in tariff or green tariff according to Ukrainian laws. Feed-in tariff valid till 2030 and pegged to euro to mitigate the risk of inflation. The premium of 5 or 10% on top of green tariff rate is applied for the use of Ukrainian equipment and the wind farms commissioned till 31 December 2024. So far, mainly wind turbines of Vestas production have been installed at the Ukrainian wind parks. Last year, several contracts by delivery GE wind turbines to Ukrainian were signed. So, by the end of 2018, wind turbines manufactured by GE Renewable Energy will also generate green electricity in Ukraine. As of the end 2017, the cumulative capacity for renewable energy facilities in Ukraine operating under the green tariff increased to nearly 1.2 thousand megawatts. They generated about 1.47% of the total electricity consumed in Ukraine. Wind and solar energy are the largest source of green electricity in the country. In 2017, only wind and PV plants delivered about 1.7 million megawatt-hour of electricity. The total installed wind capacity in Ukraine increased to 594 megawatts by the end of 2017, including 506 megawatts on the mainland of Ukraine. The installed wind capacity in the Crimea has not changed and is the same as in 2017. Energy Association forecasts a steady increase in wind power capacity by 2020 at over 200 megawatts per annum. Ukraine has excellent wind power resources to ensure the development of large wind projects. The Carpathian and South regions of Ukraine have the best wind potential in the Ukraine. Naturally, the wind development has covered above areas located in these regions. Currently, the Zaporizhia regions with 200 megawatts installed is leading in terms of installed wind capacity. In 2017, the wind power capacity also increased in the Kherson, Mykolaiv, and Lviv regions. The first wind turbine was installed in Ivano-Frankivsk region. So, what are the main opportunities and challenges for wind development in Ukraine? Main obstacles to rapid deployment of wind technologies in Ukraine include power plants can only be built on lands designated for industrial use. Ongoing military operation in the East Ukrainian and annexation of the Crimea by Russian Federation. In total, about 2,000 megawatt wind project has been stopped in these territories. International insurance companies are quite reluctant to participate in projects in the country due to high country risk. Local banks remain expensive. Expansion only GSB Bank. The factors driving wind power development in Ukraine include good wind resources, large amount of non-agricultural land suitable for wind development, attractive feed-in tariff fixed in euro, premium system for locally produced wind equipment. According to the National Energy Strategy of Ukraine till 2035, the share of renewable in the energy balance of Ukraine should reach 25%. We publish about the wind market of Ukraine every year. If you're interested in information, you can contact me. Thank you very much for my short presentation.
Thank you, Andrei. It's great to hear that this type of energy is getting popular in Ukraine and getting some development. We would like to learn more about energy markets in Ukraine in general, and for that we would welcome again Miron Rabi and his overview of Ukraine's energy markets. Thank you.
Sorry, folks.
My two speakers are having a great conversation here while we're waiting, so maybe they can just share it with everyone.
No, I just
Question was about 138 megawatts. First of all, this is for wind wind farm occupied in the territory occupation by Russian Federation. And the two wind farm is now stopped any generation because some military people like to destroy this wind turbine. And two wind farms, Novazov and Energoprom, time to time is working, only it's a problem to the grid because it destroyed electricity line. 138 megawatts.
Thank you. Are you ready here?
Okay. Thanks everyone for your patience, and I just wanted to move forward with a brief overview of
the energy sector here in Ukraine. I think Andrii's presentation on wind is very topical because indeed alternative energy and renewables are a hot market in Ukraine currently, and I do think wind will be coming into its own the latter part of this year and 2019 for sure, with increased capacity, and it has a lot of opportunity. But what I wanted to talk about, just give you an overview of what other opportunities there are in energy and what we have. About us, you know, we're the largest law firm in the world, we're everywhere, and more importantly, we're in Ukraine. And I've been heading the energy practice in Ukraine since we've had an energy practice in Ukraine. I go back and forth, and I'm very happy to say that when we talk about the energy sectors, where we have nuclear, coal, hydrocarbons, gas transit, renewables, wind, solar, hydro, I'm happy to say that we're involved in all of it. And I think that gives us a very good perspective on what is challenging the sector, what is in the sector, and what is facing the sector, these sectors in the future. Now, here's some old stats, and we can have this. I can share this presentation with anybody who's interested. But if you look at it, you can see the capacity and the total energy supply needs and how it was split up before all the conflict started. And in looking at total energy supply, you see coal as number 1, imported gas as number 2, nuclear, oil, and renewables. And you switch over to electricity, you see how important nuclear is as number 1, and how natural gas, in terms of supplying electricity, has fallen down to place number 3. And unfortunately, wind and solar renewables at that point were less than 1%. And that whole situation is changing slowly, actually with some impetus, not only caused from the war, but investments coming in, and the fact of Ukraine's investment strategy. Now, Andriy mentioned that by 2035, the government wants renewables to be 25%. What's interesting is the government still wants nuclear to be 50%. And that's putting Ukraine at one of the largest nuclear users in Europe, next to France. Hydro at 13% and fossils only at 12%. So that's where Ukraine wants to go. And breaking down by sector, I just wanted to let you know where we are. Now, nuclear installed capacity, 13, that's not right, gigawatts. We're the 7th largest in the world. We're the 2nd in Europe in terms of installed nuclear capacity. And as I mentioned, nuclear supplied 49.4% in 2014, but in 2017 it went up to 60%. Why? Because coal deposits were taken away and somebody had to make up the difference, and that was nuclear. Again, the government does want to drop that down to 50% through increases in renewables, increases in other investment. Nuclear has always been a difficult topic in Ukraine because it's always been about Russia and about Russian investment into the Ukrainian nuclear sector. And I'm happy to say that as of last year and the 2 years before, we have U.S. investment into the nuclear sector. And that's it's changing the landscape in nuclear slowly, but positively. Holtec has been mentioned. It's doing nuclear waste storage, and it's working now. It just announced last week on working with Energoatom on producing new nuclear power plants in Ukraine, refurbishing and working on their, they have a new idea on smaller nuclear power plants. That's U.S. investment coming in. We have Westinghouse working on trying to shift the balance from Russian nuclear fuel rods to U.S.-built nuclear fuel rods. And as mentioned, there's that, as mentioned when we were talking with Minister Omeyan, there's a new EU bridge pilot PPP project on export of nuclear generated electricity to Europe.
all this very recent and very American. Likewise, the situation in coal, not very positive. If you see, looking at the statistics there, 57% of coal production was taken over by the separatists. And of 90 state-owned mines, only 35 were not in the ATO. So production fell by 62% on the state sector and 38% generally. So what happened, we're importing coal now, and I'm happy to say that we're importing coal from the U.S. as well. Ex-coal from Pennsylvania has become an important strategic importer of coal to Ukraine. It's another great development in U.S. investment into Ukraine and a strategic investment into Ukraine. And also there's technology refitting Ukrainian power plants to work with other coal. It's working from dirty coal to anthracite. And then we work on to, perhaps my favorite, the one I'm most familiar with, is hydrocarbons. And if you look at the current mix of hydrocarbons, Ukraine is a natural gas country. 89% is natural gas, only 7.9% is oil, and 3.1% is gas condensate. It's fifth in Europe in gas production, and 90% of that produced is in the Dnipro-Donetsk basin. So, as Ilya was saying, Ukraine does have gas and has to develop it, and it has potential. But if we look at the split, who are the players in the hydrocarbon sector? You have UGB with 73%. I don't know, it's not a very good. The percentages don't reflect the way the graph is split. Sorry about that. I'm not very. But UGB and Ukrenaft. UGB is gas, and Ukrenaft is gas and oil. 73%. They comprise 80% of the market. Is state-owned. And then you add the five major players in energy, like ETEC, Burisma, and the rest, basically, I'd say oligarch-dominated groups. That's another 17%. And that adds, as Ilya was saying, a bunch of minor players, which are 33% of the Ukrainian gas market, who have licenses, are developing or are not developing those licenses, and, as Ilya was saying, a market for investment and reform. But if you look at the policies adopted by the government, you have to understand that. Am I cheating it now? Thank you. What this table shows you is that government policies in oil and gas have been dominated by creating oil and gas policies for the state. 80% of the sector is state-owned. So gas policies have been really focused on the state and 70% on vested interest in Ukraine. So it's not the energy policy has not been very democratic because it hasn't been serving the private market. And that shows ups and downs of royalty rates. As the war ended, royalty rates went significantly up, killed the market. As of 2016, rates went down, still not as far as investors wanted them to go, but it was a marked improvement, but nobody was willing to drill. But as of January 2018, you can see that the government has placed an emphasis on investment and drilling. Look at the rates, how they've changed. Now, any new wells being drilled are at 12% if they're drilling up to 5,000 square meters, and 6% if they're going below 6,000 meters. And the PSA rate has also decreased. And there's a new law simplifying permitting and land rights. And that's a significant change from the market previously. Clearly, the government is focusing on trying to get new investment and new drilling into the market. And my understanding, I think Ilya's as well, if you talk to the market players, they are now finally working on drilling programs an investment program, because finally they are being incentivized to do so. That's a very new change in the market over the past 3 years. But, again, as you were saying, there's issues. It needs investment. 150 drilling rigs in Ukraine, about 75% are obsolete. Hard to drill, we have nothing to drill with. So, suppliers, energy companies coming in to provide supply into the market is another crucial element that is lacking, and clearly there's a market for it. That's a positive change. And there's positive changes in gas transit. You know, we still have one of the largest systems in the world, the largest in Europe. Underground gas storage capacity is the largest in Europe. And as you know, over the past couple of years, Ukraine has not been dependent on direct Russian gas imports. Everything's been going through reverse flow from Europe, and Ukraine has been buying gas at European spot rates. Very positive. And now we have that Stockholm Award that Ilya was talking about, where there are two disputes, one on gas supply and one on gas transit. On the gas transit, recently won last week. We won 4.63 billion against Gazprom, net with the prior court decision. That's 2.56 billion net positive to Ukraine as a result of the gas transit award. All that means is, you know, we can unbundle, we can proceed to the EU third energy package, reform the sector. However, I do think that gas transit is probably the most problematic currently in Ukraine, because Stockholm requires not only gave us some money, but requires Ukraine to now start buying Russian gas. Between 4 and 5 billion CCMs at the Euro spot price, which is a better price, but now the European gas traders are thinking, how much in the market is now left for us? Because if Ukraine is obligated to buy that much gas from Russia again directly, because it does have that still existing gas supply contract, the market for foreign gas traders is now being reduced. Now, we all know that Russia is now, quote unquote, declaring a war on gas. It says it will supply Europe, but it wants to terminate the gas contracts by arbitration right now. That's a bluff. You can't terminate a contract by arbitration anytime soon, which means nothing's going to happen until the end of 2019, when the current supply and transit contracts expire. And that's the big question in gas transit. Where are we going to be in 2020? Ilya, I'm not sure. That'll be a big follow-up discussion, but we're not sure. Is Ukraine going to renegotiate a new gas contract? At what rates? Favorable, no favorable? What's going to happen with Nord Stream 2? Germany wants it. Germany is pro-sanctions, but pro-Nord Stream. What's going to happen with South Stream? Will Ukraine remain a transit country? Certainly, capacity is going to reduce significantly. What that spells for Ukraine, currently it's making $2 to $3 billion a year in gas transit. Every year, despite all the problems with Russia, it's making that. That's income. So Ukraine is very concerned about losing that amount of money starting 2020. So you have to watch this space very carefully. Certainly, that'll be one of the top issues for the government, notwithstanding elections, parliamentary or presidential, something that the government has to deal with. But the positives, moving on to renewables, as Anthony mentioned, is that that market can only grow. Installed capacity, solar and wind, is now somewhere between 1.3 and 1.8% in the market, as you mentioned. And the government target for renewables for 2020 is 11%, certainly has a long way to go. You can see the for solar, wind, bio, small hydro, etc. on the chart. And as Andriy mentioned, why is it attractive? It's the feed-in tariff, because it's 15% above the European average, and it's fixed in Europe. And you have the bonus for using Ukrainian components. And we have a development that power purchase agreements can be obtained prior to construction, but unfortunately, the feed-in tariff, as a negative, is available only after construction. That's a bit of a trick for producers and developers in Ukraine, but as the PPA model is being improved and as the market can only grow, it's a very attractive and very hot market. We have most of our energy projects currently with clients are in energy, wind and solar. And the rates, Andriy mentioned the rates for wind. I just wanted to add solar, bio, hydro, and geothermal. You can see them on the board. The talk in the market is that the rates are too high. Why are they too high? Because installed capacity is growing. And more installed capacity means the government has to supply this tariff and make it available for that much more electricity. And that's going to be a burden on the market. So we're expecting, say in 2019 and 2020, that there will be market adjustments because we don't think it's that sustainable. Now, some people are concerned about that. On the other hand, I was in Frankfurt at an energy conference we were hosting on the European energy renewables market generally, and it seems to me that most of Europe has gone through this discussion that that enticing players to the market causes the market to heat up, and those benefits that the government is offering, it now diplomatically has to slowly reduce and withdraw simply because it just can't handle the capacity. Now, not being able to handle the capacity, I think, is a good thing. And as you can see from the prior slide, there's a lot of capacity still to improve. So, again, watch the space. It's extremely dynamic. There's a lot of good investors in energy coming into the positive drive coming into this market, but it will change. So my takeaways for this presentation would be, frankly, the U.S. is coming into the energy sector significantly and hard with very significant projects. Not only private sector, also OPEC. It's changing the market. Positive trends in renewables, positive trends in hydrocarbons and nuclear, problematic transit. And with that, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Miron, for this detailed presentation, for bringing our attention to problematic areas, but also highlighting the positives. With that said, I would like to invite our next guest, Leonid Melezhik. Leonid is the president of MGI Group, and he will talk to us about the development program for renewable energy sources in Ukraine. Please welcome Leonid Melezhik.
Private sector. Investment project, establishment of energy holding company. First time we start. First time we start project power plant, approximately 6 megawatt in Vinnytsia region. It was good project, very nice. We had a good partner, but when we go to look at raw material, it was a really big problem. Because not regulation, not market raw material. And next we have next we have the project First project in Vinnytsia region power plant is generation heat and electricity. We have problem with raw material. Second project we have in Borispol is reconstruction and maintenance of boiler operation on wood chips, willows and other biomass. A good project is after 2 years you can come back money. But here same problem. We don't have enough raw material, we don't have enough biomass. And when we go to forest, forest is a government project. It's take good raw material for 10 years, it's impossible. And after this we look for growing of energy wheels. It's a must-be first project. Growing of energy wheels. Now we do it in 4 years. We made 4 Ukrainian wheels material, and now we growing this project. Look at partners. You know what we have good Eurocent 20.38 on biomass, but really and power plant and heat boiler doesn't work. I repeat it because we don't have enough raw material. And after this, we will build a big project where we combine 4 projects. First, it's energy wheels, production of wood chips. Second, Vinnytsia region power station operation of soil fuel, and Borispol reconstruction and maintenance of boiler, which will operate of chips of energy wheels. And we have one more firm with manufacturing of solid fuel powders. We have all full cycling. But now we start work with growing wheels. What we do? First, it's selection of wheels. Second, providing the best cutting of wheels for a specific type of soil. Recommendation for selection of land. Preparation for landing. Planting and care of wheels. Assisting in harvesting, providing equipment for harvesting raw materials, storage and wood chip. And all who are interested in our service. It's farms. Each farm has a number of lands that are not suitable or less suitable for farming, or which is possible to grow in energy wheels. Agrarian holding own a large bank of bank and assessment and equipment. Thermoelectrical power needs to work or can work on soil fuel, power station, and boiler house. And different interesting here. If you see these willows growing for 1 year, it's growing 3 meters, 35 centimeters per 1 year. It's really a good project, growing raw materials. It's like really forest. Then it's growing 3 years, and every 3 years you can cut it and have biomass. If you see calculation, if you use gas, you have 131 profitability. If you use our raw materials, you have 184%. It will be really good business project. It's full cycling growing wheels and storage, and after this using our power plant and water system. We start from growing of villas because I repeat, we don't have enough raw materials to use in power plant. And we propose full cycling, growing and using wood chips. You can see here. You can see a big project built a power plant and calculated. But this must be done in the third year after we start growing field. It's rebuild heat power ways use gas. You can rebuild or use the biomass. Okay, thank you very much. Sorry, my English is not so very good.
Thank you so much. Please remember questions if you have them. We're going to save them till the end. We're running a little bit behind the schedule, but we still have time, and we have two more exciting speakers. And I would like to introduce Irina Venediktova, who is going to talk to us about Ukraine's energy reform and any law issues around that. Irina is a lawyer and the chair of the Civil Law Department in Kharkiv State University. She is also auditor of the Ukrainian Chamber of Commerce. And please join me in welcoming Irina Venediktova.
Thank you very much, but I need a presentation too. I know that no one loves her, especially if we are very close to the end of the section. Maybe if we are on the territory of the tenders, it is really exceptional. But please either help me with the presentation. I try to make a wide spectrum of issues and try to be very short and very quick. I think if you decide to ask me something, it will be better.
It will be better, thank you very much. It will be better to do later, yes? If you want questions, yes, but I think we need to put it on and make a white. The future of Ukraine's energy sector. I used the material of Ukrainian Radunkov Center. It was really good, big presentation, and I decided to make it more shortly and maybe more legally. We have three main phases of the energy strategy. First one is in 5 years, next one 10 years, and another one in 20 years. You see all these perspectives, energy sector's reforms in 5 years. On this basis of EU legislation implementation. Key tasks of this period: competition of the implementation of the third EU energy package, modern energy market formations, institutional reform of the state energy companies, and integration to NSG. I think that NSG is very actual for Ukrainian now. Increasing of domestic natural gas production, progressive decreasing of GDP energy intensity. I think the another phase is very logical after the first one. It is optimization and innovation development of the energy infrastructure. And we are looking for integration to INSA-E, modernization of the energy grids infrastructure, smart grids implementation, countries' achievements to self-provision with natural gas from domestic production. And another one which will finish in 2035, ensuring sustainable energy development. Improvement development and CHP plants and NPT in construction instead of disposal of obsolete units. Adaptation of the gas transportation system to the actual demands of the all-European gas market. And increasing domestic natural gas production. I don't know, maybe Mr. Andrei will then say something in this sphere too, because I know he knows about these phases. This slide shows Ukrainian laws which consist of possibilities.
I think that we have real good laws. We have problem with enforcement, and I think that all CIC countries have the same problems. For investors, I want to say that we have real good guarantees, and we have now some tax privileges in this sphere, and it may be real very interesting looking at the six taxes privileges. And the last one slide is a slide about arbitration. I think that this is the main slide of my presentation because it really shows the possibilities to protect your profits and protect your investitions. You know about this case, Naftogaz vs Gazprom. It was started in 2014. Two state-owned companies, Naftogaz and Gazprom, were involved in the legal dispute over contractual obligations under the term of gas supplies and transit. Now we have the final decision, February 28, 2019. Stockholm arbitration announced a decision in the dispute between Naftogaz and Gazprom. They had confidential information, and we have real not the same information from Ukraine and from Russian Federation, and this award was not published. But according to Naftogaz, the arbitration confirms the violation but Gazprom of obligation on the volumes of transit and awarding compensation in about more than $4 billion. I think that for Ukraine it's a good precedent, and it shows that the appeal of legal mechanism for resolving dispute issues in relations with more powerful counterparties can provide positive effects in Ukraine and its investors. It is also important that the results obtained by Naftogaz allows us to hope for the success of Ukraine on another legal front in international investment and arbitrage initiated by a number of Ukrainian companies, including Naftogaz against Russian Federation. It is important because all of us think about annexation of the Crimea and to protect assets which were of Ukrainian businessmen in the Crimea. I know that we all here are cosmopolitans, and of course we have different information, but we try to look on the documents and try to protect investigations. Now I want to say that in Ukrainian commercial arbitration we have several very similar cases. This company is absolutely from private sector, and they used the same arguments in such take-or-pay. And it is really very interesting how arbitrators decided these cases. Because in the Supreme Court of Germany, we have the award which is very similar to award of arbitration Stockholm. And I think this points to a general trend for legal protection in this sphere. Another case, GKX Oil and Gas vs Ukraine, it is, I think, real another case. It is running from 1993. And Ukraine won in this case because we could save more than $100 billion. GKS Oil and Gas, it is UK company, and I think they really had good arguments, but for us it was a public order. It was a tax dispute. That's what Ukraine could won. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Maria. And again, I'm just reminding, with your questions, you'll have a chance to ask them. I would like to introduce Andrew Prima, who would like to share with us some of the good and positive things about Ukraine. Andrew is an investor and a business leader, and he invested in Ukraine Business Journal. It's an English language publication that delivers business news from Ukraine. And I would like all of us to hear about this because it's a good source of information in the era with the media flooded with news you can't really trust and a combination of political news and opinions. It's good to have a source where you can learn information that you can trust. Please welcome Andrew Prima.
Yeah, it works actually. I'm gonna try to keep that very short and I know everybody pretty much died. So what happened to me, I was running on a plane with this gentleman right here. You can see this gentleman right here. This heavy face, the guy who spent 24 years working for the New York Times. And he was chief editor at Bloomberg in Moscow. So this gentleman has about 35, 40 years of experience in journalism. So we met at the plane, and he said that, you know what, Andrew? At that time, I was finishing MBA program in Cleveland State, Ohio. So he said that, oh, Andrew, by the way, I moved to Ukraine. I was like, that's interesting because at that time already was like about 10, 12 years in the United States, studying, working for different companies. And he said, you know what, I see a lot of positive things that are happening in Ukraine. I was like, that's interesting because where I'm reading, when you live in the United States, you don't have all this information. You don't have the access to all the information. And I said, what do you mean positive things? I haven't heard anything positive in the last 10, 12 years. It was like, well, we spent pretty much 9 hours just talking. He opened my eyes on things. And I was like, you know what? Instead of buying a fancy car, I would rather invest the money in UVJ. So this is how we actually started, because it was a small startup with a group of very smart people. And so right now we have, we don't write anything about politics. It's just purely business. We actually, I just felt like when I didn't know anything about Ukraine, I was like, if someone wants to invest their money, how do they know what's going on in Ukraine if you just see the negative stuff in other publications, and everything's so bad, the corruption, people are stealing, nothing's going to happen, we're all about to die, there's nothing good in Ukraine. So I believe that this group of people, very talented journalists, are trying to educate and deliver the good, positive news about Ukraine and show that here's something going on. So basically what I'm trying to say that UBJ is a publication that is completely free. You can always get it every morning, Monday through Friday, in your email and read about the news, the things that are happening in Ukraine. So this is the gentleman who making things happen. So every morning, you don't have to spend. We understand that it's a totally new approach. You have only 10-15 minutes every morning while you're having your breakfast, a cup of coffee. You don't have to go through like so many articles that do not relate to the business. Basically, you have exactly 15 minutes to finish your coffee, to read what's going on in Ukraine, and you're done. Monday through Friday, you'll have all the information that you will need in order to consider doing the business in Ukraine. So basically, we have the weekly reports, we have the opportunity report. Actually, one of those reports I have in my hand is called IT Opportunity Report. So we're going to have opportunity report like that on agriculture sector, infrastructure, every quarter. So you will see what exactly going on and how Ukraine is doing in order to promote the businesses and help the businesses in Ukraine. So, and when just for example, the last few points, when we were talking about the business in Ukraine, we have, for example, we have the Turkish Airlines here. That's the company that's working in Ukraine already for quite a few years. and they can tell the traffic. So there's so many travels right now going to Ukraine, though the rates are up. It's about 20–25%. So when you look at the real estate, I just met with the guys who opened the real estate fund. So they opened the fund, and they had only $3 million, which is not, compared to New York City probably, it's nothing. But these guys, in the last year, increased the fund up to $10 million, and they're paying dividends, and they do very well. And when you look at the privatization law is on the way. Construction, the square footage of square meters being built in Ukraine this year is up by 23%. Look at our geographical location. We're right there. If you think about it, our wages are lower right now, lower than Chinese labor per hour, and we're right here next to this is central location. You don't have to spend the money to transport your goods to Europe, and the cost of your goods produced is going to be so much higher. So, and honestly, the last few sentences. So, when you guys read the UBJ, you will see what's going on in Ukraine. A lot of things are happening in Ukraine that people don't know. I met one guy, he said, you know what, I've been doing very well in Ukraine. It's been 5 years. I keep it quiet. I don't want people to know this because I like this story. Because there is no competition for me. All right, thank you so much, guys.
Thanks so much, Andrew. May I ask you, so this publication focuses on good news. Would you publish bad news as well, to be accurate?
I would say something horrible happens. Yes, but we're not going to publish. we're not going to publish like what these guys told you $3 million. I mean, we have corruption all over the world, right? Same thing in the United States, not maybe that much, but just let's concentrate on positive things. I mean, this guy already stole $3 million. Nothing. We're not going to get the money back. We know this. Just keep on going. Let's concentrate on positive stuff. This guy's already probably somewhere in Greece. Who knows? So let's think about like the business. And there was a good point, because when people talk about like long-term sustainable business, long-term investments, and I think this is our CEO of Nova Costa said, right? So we need the people who are interested in long-term business and investments, because that's how it's going to go with the Ukraine, I believe. So thank you so much, guys. Stay positive.
Thank you. Good meeting. Maria, do we have a few more minutes for questions, for comments? Okay, so we have 5 minutes, and we're taking questions to any of the...
Can I make it?
Yeah.
3 things, I think. 1, I think, Andrew, you're going to make a lot of money. 2, I don't know him, we just met. I read the UBJ email every morning. It's the first thing that I read. 3rd, you just did yourself a disservice by saying you don't only publish positive news. You got to be upfront with everything. Credibility is the biggest thing that you got, and you have to prove the good, the bad, so people from the outside can make absolute informed decisions.
You make the decisions. We just tell the truth. We don't lie. We don't want it to make it. Oh my God, everything's so beautiful. Come over. You're gonna be a king.
But to Elias' point, I think it was Elias. You gotta publish the bad too.
No. I understand that, but I'm not gonna say somebody got killed or something. But we're gonna say that. Listen, you reading the news. You know what I'm saying, because we probably that this law came into the power, so we don't we wait for this law to get implemented. But I mean, we don't lie. We just state the facts.
If I may just comment on this, we need to be sober here. We understand that what is bad for consumers sometimes is very good for business. And that's the reality. Yeah, people in Ukraine right now, they are poor, and there are a lot of bad things for them with the raising tariffs and everything. But the raising tariffs of the liberalization of the gas market is very good for gas producers and for the investors. And the same thing with renewable energy, with all those tariffs, that may be sometimes bad for the consumers or for the state budget, but it's very good for the investors. And that's the current situation. So when we are looking at the news, they always been presented from the point of view of consumers. And that's not the case for business. And I was listening carefully at everybody, what everybody was saying during their presentations. Everybody was saying about the good regulations. And there was not a bad word about them. Yeah, for the country, for regular people, sometimes for ordinary people is tough. But for business, there are unparalleled opportunities right now.
Thank you. So any more questions from the audience? Yes, sir. Please introduce yourself.
Yes, Boris Kizik. Two questions. My first question is, energy requires significant capital investment, aka FDI. From an investor's perspective, what are the ROIs that you can offer the investors over what duration is my first question. Open to the open.
So who wants to answer that?
In general, again, when we are coming to Ukraine, I am looking at a lot about the experience that we had in Russia in 90s, and it's very easy to compare because sometimes I know what is the answer in the textbook. You know, is when I'm looking, you know, it's something that we experienced, you know, 20 years ago back in my country, and at that time we had the criteria: if IRR is less than 25%, we're not supposed to go into the project. In fact, in Ukraine, there are way higher IRRs usually, so it's pretty easy to achieve that. Even if we are not talking about the IRR within the project, but just as the from the point of the financial investors, as a pure financial market speculation, it's very easy to notice that the companies that were 500 million in market value in 2013 right now at 50. And maybe they will not be back to 500 within the next 2-3 years, but there is no space to fall, you know, and they are growing anyway. And we see that the market starts to appreciate those companies more and more. So again, if the deal is properly structured, and if it's not dependent on the state, and if you are not expecting the state to be reasonable in terms of some particular actions, then you will make very, very nice investment in the country, and you know this perfectly yourself.
My second, is anyone else?
Anyone else wants to add to that? No? All right.
My second question is following to your comment, Ilya, which was very well answered, is there's been an increased level in energy speculation in Ukraine as a result of changes in legislation in 2017, which is mirroring what happened in the agro sector with the confluence of more agro grain traders coming into the country, which is not necessarily a good thing because everything is geared toward export. Nothing stays within the country, commodities prices collapse, etc. How do you see the energy market changing for the good or for bad, given this recent new licenses? I believe 235 new trading energy licenses were issued in 2017. How is that going to impact your particular spaces in wind, energy, solar, oil, fossil fuel?
So who wants to take that? Irina?
I can say briefly, the world is changed really, and I think for us, now we can do some remarks, because maybe 3 years should pass, and after that we can see, is it really some criminal issues or it is real reforms? I think so.
Again, I will be more positive here, because after the market liberalization in terms of gas prices, the business is absolutely open, and there are no restrictions on the access to the pipeline, for example, and stuff like that. There is a huge market potential in terms of modernization of refineries and petrochemical facilities. agriculture business demands a lot of fertilizers, for example, and the production in Ukraine is virtually non-existent right now. It was heavily dependent on Russia. In the past, for example, for producing of fertilizers and different plastics that are required for agriculture, the niche is open. Out of 6 refineries in Ukraine, 5 right now are non-operational. And there is a huge potential here, but it's more capital intensive process. So strategically, I would say the first thing to solve is about the upstream side, and then going into the downstream side. But I definitely see that we will be in the downstream side in the next 3 to 5 years.
Well, we have time for one more question. So somebody. Oh, sure.
I agree with Ilya, but in respect to the licensing, I think what we've seen is a short-term need in Ukraine for import of gas at any cost, whether it's re-exported gas, retraded at European spot rates by European traders into Ukraine, and some European gas coming into the market. And that's been necessary to for 2 reasons. One, to fix the deficit on gas consumption here in Ukraine, and also it's been strategically used by the government, I think, to leverage its discussions with Gazprom. What we've seen with the arbitration decision is that now Russia is obligated to sell gas directly to Ukraine at Euro spot rate prices. That will, I think, start eliminating the European middleman who's simply re-exporting, reverse transiting Russian gas. So, although there's a lot of licenses to trade coming into the market and a lot of traders coming in, some will come, some will go. I think the interesting trend will be to look which of the European traders will be trading actual European gas in Ukraine. One issue, as terms of the next step, will be what Russia will do, and will we hit a new gas agreement based on new pricing? That will make sense, ultimately, for both parties. So we're going to have a lot of leveraging going on in the next couple of years. And the third point will be, as Irina mentioned, the third EU energy package, which is unbundling and diversification of the market, but one of those requirements is also allowing the Ukrainian market to export. Because currently Ukrainian gas is not exported. It is a strategic resource that's required in Ukraine. And if the market develops correctly, and if Ukraine does go the route of fully implementing European directives, and it's supposed to be doing it under the third directive and under the EU Association Agreement, it should at some point start allowing export of this gas. So that will be an interesting development. So I think those 3 issues are something to watch.
All right, so one last question very quickly. Anybody? Yes, please.
Hi, everybody. Viktor Varenchuk, Managing Director, HQ Energy Consulting. It's my understanding that over years, natural gas and other energy commodities in the former USSR, even in Baltic states, have been like political tools in terms of fighting for political achievement, etc. So probably my question to Miron, is it not time to persuade state trying to knock the house to go to IPO, to be like a blue chip company, like Northern State Oil in Norway? Everybody is talking about the deal, but nobody's doing so far.
Well, nobody's talking about it more than Naftogaz itself is always thinking about it. But I think you can't do that yet. Naftogaz needs to unbundle, and Europe is expecting it to unbundle. So Naftogaz today is not going to be the Naftogaz of Naftogaz in the next 2 years. So what will come to market at some point will be Naftogaz, will be the United Energy, United Transit Company, the pipeline network, and the production network. Those unbundled entities will come to market, I think. But it's not going to happen until that happens. And we all know that the roadblock to unbundling has been arbitration. And Kovalev of Naftogaz flat out said we cannot implement that European directive until we're done with the dispute. And after this dispute, I think we have to be mindful that now they'll be pressured to unbundle, but Russia will tell them you can't because you're bound by your contract, your existing contract, which Stockholm reaffirmed as valid under renegotiated terms and reformatted terms, that it's valid and our contract is with Naftogaz. There's a big discussion in the market now on the assignability of the contract, which Naftogaz wants to do. Right? It wants to assign a contract to the unbundled entity, and Russia is saying no. So I think that in these 2 years, there's just going to be heavy negotiating. You're going to be hearing very drastic comments from Russia. You're going to be hearing equally drastic comments from Ukraine in terms of leveraging each other's positions. But I think what's changed is that Ukraine and Naftogaz have become more confident in leveraging. And I think and we have to commend the new management of Naftogaz that they have the guts to do that. And despite complaints that we have to the Ukrainian government that they're not afraid to use the leverage that they have commercially to negotiate another deal. And but it's going to be a tough negotiation.
Do you wanted to add something?
I'd like to invite you to the renewable energy sector because it's a transparent sector, first of all. Second, this is green tariff is back to Europe. It's bankable and guaranteed. And in Ukraine we have many change law. Today we have this new electricity market law about environmental impact law. This is its European direction, and will come to renewable energy sector. It's the best business in Ukraine. Ukraine has huge potential and way to peace. Thank you.
Thank you. And one more comment from Ilya.
I just want to uphold Miron's position, but to go a little bit further than that, I think that the worst thing that can happen for Ukrainian energy market is any kind of outside investment into Naftogaz, making it public or through EPRZ funding or through whatever which is being discussed, because what is really needed is demonopolization of the market. Ukraine's geological situation is such that it needs competitive mid-sized companies which would be bringing new technologies, fighting against each other, increasing production as the result. So Naftogaz as a state company, and that was the original vision of Naftogaz management, and I hope that they will go this path and not get diverted through whatever reason, is to convert Naftogaz into a marketplace as a guarantor for the supply deals of the natural gas, while Ukrgas Vidobывание, the main gas producing entity, would be split into several parts and privatized separately to different owners, creating a competition on the market. And the same thing with Ukernafta and others. Yes, the first step would be just to unbundle them vertically into different businesses, but then to privatize them separately, probably splitting them apart as well.
Thank you, everyone. With this, we have to wrap it up. Thank you, all the speakers, for sharing your insights on investing in Ukraine and energy market. And thank you for being here.
Thank you very much, Kati, for moderating, and I would like to thank you once again to all our partners, to Dentas, to Turkish Airlines, to Tokmak Energy, to UBJ, to Wind Association of Ukraine, and to all our partners, including Airlife, Credit Capital, A7 Capital, Ukrposhta for our postal logistic partner, and to all our media partners. We also have a publication for Business Ukraine, and opportunity to grab it with the top 100 best Ukrainian companies in English. This is the first publication in Ukraine. And I would like to thank once again, big thank you to all of you who are so committed to Ukraine, and I'm very much sure that each year we will grow and grow the interest to Ukraine, and with all the support of our partners, speakers, and all the friends we have here in US and all over the world. Thank you very much.